Shane Beamer has his South Carolina Gamecocks primed to have a relevant and fantastic 2025 season. This team is in the topic of conversation every single week. Why? Because they return one of the best quarterbacks in college football in Lenore Sellers. Many have him being a Heisman contender throughout next year, and a lot of that it will have to do with his play improving and, of course, taking another step, increasing the production, throwing the football. Of course, we know he's going to be a threat with his legs, and of course, not a lot of turnovers. That all can happen. He can have a great year. Obviously, the start to the season is going to be not cupcakes, but a ton of winnable football games before the middle of the season is something out of a horror movie. They're going to be having tight battleship games, going back and forth, trading blows with other schools, ruining other teams' chances, other teams maybe ruining theirs, but it's going to be beautiful cinema for South Carolina next year. Have to mention, of course, Dylan Stewart is going to be either the most no-name or second most, depends on whether you're a defensive or offensive guy, maybe the best defensive player in college football going into next year. We know all of the guys. We'll talk about them, who they lost to the NFL draft. TJ Sanders, Nick Emmanwori going to the Seattle Seahawks. Of course, we know what they lost in Kyle Kennard, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. But without ado, let's get started. The 2025 preview and predictions for South Carolina next year. They start off the year against Virginia Tech. This is played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Believe that they can get a win against the Hokies, 40-22. Now, Virginia Tech, of course, would have a crazy advantage. We know how things get with Enter Sandman when you go into that place on the road. Getting this thing at a neutral site is a blessing that they are just going to be thankful for in Gamecock land, because being able to start the year 1-0, not going into a raucous environment, like being able to establish a sense of offense and drop 40 points. South Carolina State 50-9. Dylan Stewart might have 4 sacks in this game, like they might take him out, but you know who might have an even bigger impact is Nick Harbor. He is a freak, like 6'5", 230 pounds, but runs in the low 4.3s. This guy could have a 1,000-yard year for South Carolina and would be a foundational part of it. They were able to slide into the college football playoff. Not a lot of people are expecting that to happen. Of course, save their fans because of all the hype surrounding Lenore Sellers, but Nick Harbor, he can very easily find himself being taken in that NFL draft quite highly in Pittsburgh. In their third game, they faced Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. Of course, nobody will take this team lightly at all, knowing what they did to Alabama last season with that upset win. Not that Alabama was this fantastic, amazing team, but still upsetting a team of that brand will have people ready to go. And honestly, does Vanderbilt maybe a disservice that they don't get that type of treatment again by another team. 30-19, have them coming up with a win at Mizzou week 4. This team is 3-0. People are obviously talking about them with confidence. Of course, college football years start off with so many teams being 3-0, 4-0 to start the year with some of those easier matchups. Of course, the likes of Clemson and LSU playing each other. Miami, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas, like they don't have the opportunity to do that. There's going to be a lot of great teams with losses earlier in the year, but South Carolina needs this jolt of momentum, getting a bunch of games stacked in the win column. Think they get another game stacked in the win column against Mizzou. It's so tough when you bring in a new quarterback. Brady Cook had been there for 3 years, finished his career as one of the more prolific passers. I think 5th overall in passing yards in the history for Missouri. 31-17, Lenore Sellers and company getting a win. The last game before the bye week, and where the schedule might be the toughest 4-game stretch in all of college football. They play Kentucky. There's no Deion Walker. There's no Maxwell Hairston on that defense anymore. Kentucky, we know what they did to Ole Miss last year. You got to take them as a team, respect the talent that they have. But 31-23, Ole Miss couldn't run the football against Kentucky. Like, he just couldn't stay on the field as an offense. 31-23. Have South Carolina starting off the year with a fantastic 5-0. The expectation is that South Carolina starts off the year 5-0, and I'll go out and say this: if they don't start off the year 5-0, they will not make the college football playoff. Confidently, we will say that. We know how great they played down the stretch of the season last year. Very high-end football, even with the loss to Illinois. You can throw that out the gate as far as the college football playoff conversation. They needed to not lose one of those games early in the year. Why did it take so long for the darn thing to get going? They hit the bye week 5-0 before they are on the road at LSU. Now, the topic of conversation is going to surprise you for a lot of this because of what's about to happen, in my opinion, for South Carolina, but I think they get that win. 27-24 on the road at Death Valley, one of the harder environments, probably top 5 in college football to play in, especially when it is a big matchup. South Carolina could be top 10 in the country at this point with a start to the year of 5-0, but Garrett Nussmeier and company pose to be a huge threat. Harold Perkins is back. They have Whit Weeks on defense. That defense is supposed to be much better next year, continue to make strides, but 27-24, South Carolina pulls it out. Now, after starting the year 6-0, South Carolina fans, the team, people are going to be all for it, like really expecting them to make that run, get into the college football playoff. What you have to understand is they still got Oklahoma, Alabama, at Ole Miss, at A&M, and Clemson. That is ridiculous. The fact that they had a win against LSU already to this point on the road at Mizzou and still have to play those games is unfortunate, but that's the reality of life in the Southeast Conference. I have them losing to Oklahoma, their first loss of the season, 24-16 against John Mateer and company. Now, John Mateer is a threat with his legs just as much, if not more, than Lenoris Sellers is, and of course, he's going to have to find a way, Lenoris that is, to get the ball to someone else besides Harbour. Like, Brent Venables and his defenses are going to take something away from you. He's going to make sure that you don't have your out pitch. You don't have, like, as Joel Klatt says all the time, like that one thing that you can count on, that you can go to consistently and know it's going to win, know it'll be there on third down. When you need a big play, remember Roma Dunze for Washington, that's an out pitch. You can go to that every time when you need it, and you can rely on that. Well, maybe it's Harbour next year. It could be Lenoris Sellers' legs. Oklahoma will take that away. Where does South Carolina go at home? That is a home loss when it is taken away. They beat Alabama 23-17. They get Oklahoma and Alabama at home. Very fortunate that they're not having to go to Norman, that they don't have to go to Bryant-Denny Stadium and Saban Field, as to now it's called. Playing Alabama, of course, poses its challenges anytime you're on the road, but just playing that team with the helmets, with the numbers on them, and Kalen DeBoer as a coach, you would expect the improvements to come, that they will be more in sync, that Ty Simpson will bring a stability to the quarterback position that was a bit of a roller coaster the last 2 years, with Jalen Milroe taking over and being their starter, being the successor to what had been Bryce Young, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, all these guys that had been drafted and been good players now in the National Football League starters. We'll see if that is or what becomes of Jalen. But having Alabama lose 23-17 to the Gamecocks, this is a tough matchup for Alabama to have. Ty Simpson, without that veteran ability, it is a tough road environment. And at this point in the year, they move to 7-1. They go on the road to play at Ole Miss. Now, there's going to be likely three teams for sure make the playoff from the SEC. They could lock it in right now. The question is, do they get 4 or 5? Last year, they only got 3. There was all that LSU losing a whole bunch of times throughout the year, like against USC early in the year, South Carolina, the games earlier in the season, Ole Miss at the end, all these, Alabama, of course, not getting into the playoff. These teams like Florida that just played a ridiculous schedule, and they do again next year, by the way. How many get in? I believe that Alabama, Georgia, and Texas will all get into the playoff. It's not crazy to say that, but who gets in from that bunch of Ole Miss, A&M, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Florida? Like, which of these squads are able to get into the playoff? Likely those types of matchups against an Ole Miss, against an LSU, against an Oklahoma, to A&M. That second tier of teams are very important just to win those and just to try and solidify a spot in the playoff. Have them losing at Ole Miss and company against quarterback Austin Simmons. Now, Ole Miss doesn't have Trey Harris anymore. They don't have like Walter Mole and Jared Ively, Princely Omamielin on defense. They do return double-digit sacks, soon Tareen Perkins. They do bring in Princely Umamielin now on the Carolina Panthers. His younger brother, Princewell Umamielin, one of the more coveted prospects that were in the transfer portal. They brought him over, have Ole Miss beating South Carolina 33-27. At that point, you are 7-2. When you hit the bye week, you're at A&M, Coastal Carolina's a dub, and then Clemson. Just split A&M and Clemson, you could find yourself in the playoff for South Carolina. Now, of course, at somewhere early in the year, there could be a loss against LSU and Alabama, actually, two of the teams they have ranked also in the top 10 along with Clemson. But at A&M, College Station, Kyle Field, the loss 21-26, a heartbreaker. I've got A&M as the 17 in the country under Marcel Reed, but bringing in Kevin Concepcion, of course, NC State was a freshman All-American 2 seasons ago. Didn't have the production for the production from the Wolfpack. A loss to A&M. That defensive line, like a number of teams, doesn't have Shamar Turner. They don't have Nick Scourton, but they do have enough to be able to have a good performance on the offense side of the ball. 26-21, the Coastal Carolina game, and you all know SEC teams played those good matchups overall, right? And that's second to last game of the year. And then it's Clemson at home. You don't know if it's a win and in. Maybe they're already out of it. It doesn't make sense. But a game against Clemson, nonetheless, could just give you that sense of pride. It could get you in the playoff if you beat them, but have them losing 28-30. So 2 one-score losses at the end of the year, 26-21, and then against Clemson, 28-30. Cade Klubnik versus Sellers. You could see these guys both in New York a couple weeks after this game. There's Peter Woods on the edge. There's TJ Parker for Clemson. They return a number of guys on the defensive side of the ball. They're veteran. They don't have the run game per se. Like, they don't have Phil Maffa returning. Who is going to be that guy that steps up to run the football for Clemson? We will have to watch and see. But of course, Cade Klubnik is likely the best quarterback in college football as it is right now in this season. Something I do need to let you know is I am making this video a couple of weeks before you are watching it. Why? Because when you're watching it currently, I will be in Africa checking out the Great Migration, heading out there to Tanzania. And so when I'm recording this, it's a couple of weeks before any potential, maybe there's injuries and factors in which I don't yet know of when I'm recording this and making it that you should be aware of in case I said something like, oh, wait, that's not even a factor. Like, what is he talking about? That guy's not even going to be on the field next year. That is why. So South Carolina, 8-4 on the year overall. Something that I bet Gamecock fans no way will take. But just establishing themselves fully as in that tier 2. And in this scenario, does Lenoris come back? It's possible. He could easily be a top 10 pick, a top 4 quarterback prospect, very heavy this draft. But I have a lot of faith in South Carolina to have a good season and be very relevant down the stretch. Let me know what you think overall about this video. Put down in the comments what you think about the Gamecocks. It's just such a tough conference. So many great teams, very good coaches, tough environments that you play in down that stretch of the year, which makes things very difficult to get into that playoff. So let me know in the comments. Please subscribe for more content in the future. Of course, I will be looking to respond to any of that and make content you want to see. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.
Best player in college football.
That Georgia-Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blunder, hi everybody, I'm Josh Blunder.
To the 40, 35, 30, Espinosa to the 20.